Lovely. So yeah, the agenda. So we'll give a very brief introduction to SOS UK as a charity, and then we'll talk about some context to the SDG Teach In, and then we'll get to, I'm sure, what everyone is very much looking forward to as the impact of the Teach In and the leaderboards, the final leaderboards. And then we'll have some really interesting guest speakers and case studies from how people actually took part in the Teach In this year, from different colleges and universities and at different scales. And then we'll conclude with how you can further embed sustainability and environmental justice into your education before concluding with any next steps for people going forward. So SOS UK is an educational charity that was launched in October 2019 following the students' movement. And at our core, we're all about engaging students so that they can be and lead on sustainability and be the change that they want to see in the world. We like to think of ourselves as like the support crew for enabling students to do that. And our mission is really to ensure that sustainability and education for sustainable development is embedded in all types of education, all the way from early years to colleges, universities, adult learning, workplaces, trade unions, and more. And yeah, a key running theme for everything we do is ensuring that sustainability is truly inclusive and just as it really should be. So just to give some very brief context to the Teach In for this year, this was the 8th annual campaign, and it is an annual campaign that calls upon all educators, trainers, or facilitators around the world to integrate one or several of the Sustainable Development Goals into their teaching and learning. And some of the key aims is to really systemically embed sustainability, not just in taught content, but also how students learn or how staff are trained on professional development and so on. It's also about linking learning and teaching with local, regional, and global issues, as well as equipping students with practical skills and competencies so that they can also feel confident in making a difference when they leave education. And just to describe the graphics on the slide, so this is some examples of students at Edge Hill University who are at a lesson learning about gender equality and women's empowerment in sustainability. So why the SDGs? So as a framework for the teaching, they're a very useful framework for highlighting the interconnections between social, environmental, and economic challenges that we're facing. And their large breadth can help illustrate, can help link to different disciplines and professions. They also really help demonstrate the breadth of different challenges that we're facing, all the way from the climate crisis towards pollution and various forms of social injustice. They're also a very useful conversation starter as well. The fact that there's so many goals to look at, they're a great way to kickstart conversations with colleagues or students who may be unaware of what is sustainability and how can they get involved. And then finally, as well, they are quite a widely recognized framework on an international scale, and also a shared kind of language across sectors and borders. So whilst we truly acknowledge the educational value of the SDGs, as part of the teaching, we're also really passionate about making it so that we engage critically with this framework. There are limitations to the SDGs. For example, the contradictions between infinite economic growth on a finite planet, as well as the lack of actually truly transformative alternatives to our existing social, political, and economic systems. So as part to sort of address these limitations as part of the teaching, you might have seen me emailing you several times throughout the month if you pledged to the campaign about all these various different resources that exist that allow you to engage with sustainability in more creative and nuanced ways. These resources were from our resource bank that is available. It will always be available on our website, so you're welcome to refer back to it. And it covered issues such as social and environmental justice, ecocentric education, decolonizing conservation, poetry, interactive games to engage learners, and many more as well. And we've been really pleased to see examples of people showing how they've used those resources online. And yeah, just on the slide are some examples of those resources, including from Julie's Bicycle, the Creative Climate Justice Hub, as well as some publications from academics within King's College London on environmental education, and a really useful resource about how to embed sustainability into different subjects and disciplines. So I guess the moment we've all been waiting for, as part of the 2025 SDG Teach In, we're very pleased to say that over 1,000 educators around the world have pledged to incorporate the SDGs into their practice. It was technically slightly under the 2024 pledge count, but as we can all agree with, it's the actions that make the most. It's not just the stats and numbers. Um, it is also quite pleasing to see as well that we reached around almost 120,000 learners worldwide through, for example, lessons and workshops or lectures. And that's about maybe a 13,000 or so increase from last year. And then also around 94 institutions took part. So that includes, for example, schools, colleges, universities, workplaces, student unions, and independent training providers. Again, an increase from last year as well. It's also really, I think, notable to say that since the inception of the SDG Teach In 2018, um, we've now reached almost 600,000 learners worldwide through this campaign, and it really helps like illustrate people's, I guess, educators and students' enthusiasm for engaging with this topic, and that's really pleasing to see. Ultimately, we do want this teaching, this campaign, to be like a catalyst for institutions to either kickstart their journey with sustainability or to continue amplifying it throughout their institution. And that's where we get into the topic of education for sustainable development, which we'll get into a bit later as well. So yes, that's some broad statistics of the teaching. In terms of also just to get like a even bigger picture view of this, the teaching also reached about 17 countries worldwide in 5 continents. And yeah, on the slider, the list of the countries, we'll also put the list in the chat a bit later. And it's really pleasing to see that, yeah, it's international. It's on an international scale. And I think that's really important as well because a lot of the ways that people have shared how they've taken part online and as part of the case studies that you'll see later, it kind of illustrates how we really do need truly different communities to collaborate on these kinds of issues and share their own contexts because everywhere it can vary quite a lot. We always want to talk about like the most popular goals embedded. So the top position, interestingly, was good health and well-being. I think that's quite nice. I think it's such an important goal. It's something that we can all certainly relate to, hopefully. Um, the second place in terms of most popular goal embedded was responsible consumption and production, and very closely followed by climate action. Quite interesting as well, last year, the top goal was climate action, and it has been a very common goal in previous years as well of the teaching, as well as good health and well-being and quality education. As part of the teaching as well, we're also very conscious about how we want to make it so that this campaign is as accessible as possible for different levels of education. And it's really pleasing to see that for this year, kind of following a trend from last year, there's been a good proportion or distribution between further and higher education, as well as a couple here and there in early years and adult or community education. And yeah, last year it was quite a similar distribution. But as you'll see in the leaderboards in a second, it's also pleasing to see that colleges are quite strongly represented in the pledges and numbers of students reached in terms of rankings at least. Great. So the final leaderboards at last. So in terms of educators pledged, um, I won't read it out, but we have also we will be publishing this on our social media very soon. But yes, the top three were Dartmouth University, Ulster University, and Gateshead College. And as you can see, there's quite a nice spread between colleges and universities. We also wanted to give a really special shout out to newcomers on the leaderboard, including Bridgend College, Bedford College Group, and the lovely University of the West Indies. Um, I should note that for the University of West Indies, this is the first year or time they've ever taken part in the teach-in. So it's certainly a fantastic, honorable mention, if that's the right word, for those that have just shows the amount of enthusiasm that their staff have had with the campaign, and for it to go forward as well. In terms of learners reached, so this learners includes both students and staff. And again, we've got a nice distribution between colleges and universities. And another notable shout out to new people on the rankings, including Myerscough College, the University of the West Indies, as well as the Open University. Um, I guess a side note with this is that I would say about maybe 85% of the people reached for the teaching are like students or young people. And then maybe about 10% or so are like staff, teaching staff, professional services, and adult learners as well. And yeah, and as a reminder, these results will be published very soon online. Yeah. Amazing. So just before we get into some practical examples of how different institutions have taken part, I want to mention that, yeah, this is my first time actually coordinating the teaching. It's been extremely fulfilling. And I think it's really important to mention that like it can seem the social and environmental challenges that we face in the world can seem extremely daunting and alienating. Individual level actions do certainly play a role in that and can make a difference. And which is what some of these case studies will reflect. And it's also important, as we say, to address for those contradictions, the limitations to the SDGs, that structural and systemic change is also a vital part for creating a more sustainable and just society, to which reforming our education systems so that they're fit for the future can play a really key leadership role in doing this. So without further ado, I will hand over to the amazing Rachel and Louise from Gateshead College to talk a little bit about how you took part.
Thank you, Oliver. So, hi everybody, my name's Rachel and I'm the Sustainability Officer for Gateshead College. And I'm just going to give a bit of an overview of how we did it holistically across the whole college. And then Louise is one of our lead practitioners and curriculum teachers who will give you a more in-depth case study of one of our examples. So, part of our strategic approach to sustainability is that it is embedded in all of our qualifications and curriculums, and that is kind of a long process to do. We're working through that team by team, and that's part of my role working with our assistant principals for curriculum as well. But we noticed that in March there was a lot of events that staff needed to be looking at embedding and getting students engaged in. And so we tried to figure out a way to maximize the engagement with our students, but minimize the workload, but make it really fun and engaging. Like Oliver just said, sometimes climate change and sustainability can feel quite daunting. So to get people engaged in different ways so that they're making those holistic links to the social and economic side, and as well as the environmental, because that seems to be everyone's first focus, we tried to approach it slightly differently this year. So we did have, as normal, we have it embedded in our lessons and assessments, but we wanted to go a little bit further and try and get people engaged. So we did have some social content done by our hair and beauty students where they're talking about the Green Salon Collective they're signed up to, which is how they collect hair for it to be composted or to be donated. Sometimes it's used to create mats that then used in mopping up oil spills. They've also changed their whole recycling system. So we recycle all of our foils, all of our tints, all of the materials that would have normally just gone straight into our general waste. So they've completely changed the way their department works. They've looked at how to use hoses for massages that use less water and to use less energy. And they're also looking at different towels that they can use for composting when they're using mobile services. So they've really gone to look at how and what they use, even down to ingredients and businesses that we buy from. So we're really proud of them, and they created some social content to share that case study with the rest of the students. During the same time, we also had the Planet Earth Games, which is a big movement also run by the Association for Colleges. And so they wanted to get sport activity and movement linked with sustainability, whether that be the health and well-being side, whether it be about action, active travel. They wanted to make those really clear links. So we ran some challenges, including plogging, which is litter picking slash jogging for those who are able, and we had a lot of students involved in that. We had an inter-campus bike challenge, so anything that's a competition definitely gets our students interested and staff as well, covered in lycra, which was fun. But we had a live system that the students ran where they were monitoring the distances travelled on exercise bikes in our campus receptions, and we ended up having queues out the door to get people engaged, which was really nice to see everyone getting involved. And then we also had guided bike rides for any staff and students who wanted to explore the local area, learn how to ride, test out an e-bike, just get involved. So we had some really good groups traveling around and finding out about areas that they didn't know and how to get in between our 4 campuses rather than doing that in a car as well. So we had conversations on healthy living, fit in activity into a stressful lifestyle, health and well-being, access to nature. It lends itself to having some really deep conversations. So that was a bit about our Planet Earth Games. And then it was also National Careers Week, which meant we had a lot of content that we were delivering around green jobs, around changes to industry, whether that be through energy, through how we procure, how businesses market themselves about greenwashing. So we had a lot of topics that go through our careers delivery. But then one of my favourite things, which was brought from a new careers advisor, is she designed a fashion show called Green Threads Dress for Success, and all of the clothes they used in the fashion show came from our upcycling hub, which is where we collect donations, fix them, and then they're given out for free. So that's our free pot project you can see in the photo as well.
Just
So
a
that was a
reminder, sorry, you have about 2 minutes, 3 minutes left. Yep.
no
Thank
worries,
you.
and that's me actually done. So then the main case study, I will pass over to Louise.
Good morning. So I'm Louise, a travel and tourism teacher at Gateshead College. Am I coming up on the screen? Because I can only see. Yeah, that's great. So yes, we were asked as teachers to try and come up with something to embed sustainability, and we do that lots anyway. I'd already done sort of net zero with the airports, and we looked at responsible tourism at destinations. So I was in the middle of teaching customer service, and all of my students had to get involved in a role play demonstrating selling and dealing with customer complaints on board an aircraft. So I thought it might be quite fun to embed some sustainability into that. And we did lots of things with them in terms of giving them different materials, so different cups and plates and packaging to decide what was the most sustainable. And I have to say the majority of them didn't get that particularly right, so that was a good learning curve for lots of them. And then we looked at all the different airlines, asked them to find out what their current policies were and how they embedded sustainability within their business. And then we used all of that information and asked students to come up with a script so that when they did their role play, they actually embedded some sustainability when they were talking to their passengers. And I think it was a great way of bringing the subject to life for students, making it real world. And I think they got a lot from it and they actually really enjoyed it. We had a lot of fun with it. So it was a good way to do it. And I think they got a lot out of it. So yeah, worked well with us, and it was just a way of bringing it to life. So on our second slide, we talk about the outcomes. And what we did, I shan't read that out to you because I've only got probably a minute left, but the quote from the student I thought was great, which said that the lesson opened my eyes to how much thought goes into making aviation more sustainable. I never realised how something as simple as reducing food waste or switching to compostable packaging could make a big difference. In the future, if I work in the aviation industry, I'll be more aware of how small changes can help the environment while still giving passengers a great experience, which I thought was a lovely way of rounding it all up. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rachel and Louise. Yeah, I do the mock aviation exercise. That's definitely a creative way of doing it. And I can't imagine the logistics you took to kind of create that environment in a realistic setting. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Brilliant. So the next speaker we have is from Forth Valley College. Jamie is.
Oh. So, hi folks, I'm Jamie Campbell from Forth Valley College. I'm a lecturer within the STEM and Construction Department, teach electrical engineering. So for the teaching, we aim to bring sustainable development goals into real practical learning throughout the college, embedding sustainability into everyday education rather than keeping it as a kind of separate theme, so much the same as our colleagues that have just spoke there. What we did was it varied by department and by team. It wasn't a kind of college-wide approach. So across students, staff, they engaged in activities like health walks and active travel. So, for example, I had hired an e-bike to get to work for the month, and that was just to kind of highlight what we were doing, trying to promote the goals 3 and 11, which was your good health and well-being and your sustainable communities and cities. So that was quite good. Other groups were doing campus litter picking, focusing on responsible consumption and production and climate action. It really showed the real world impact of local waste in our area on climate and ecosystems. Another class within the hospitality department, they had moved to ingredient-led cooking rather than recipes to kind of target zero hunger, which was your second goal. And then tackling food waste through affordability and nutritious meals. So, right, what have we got in front of us? From this, can we make 2 or 3 different meals rather than just building by a recipe and having more food waste? So I thought that was a really unique way to approach it there. Our art and design students created full projects using only scrap or recycled materials, doing your goal 12 there. And just through the creative use, trying to reduce our recycling and have them thinking about raw materials in a new and exciting way. And then within my team and the electrical installation team, as well as textiles and sustainable travel, we discussed and naturally embedded the reuse of products there, focused on the quality of the education for goal 4 and decent work and economic growth for goal 8. So examples of that, we went to the joiners. So part of that, they're woodworking, they've got to build floors out of different wood, nails, materials. When that would normally get to the end of the year, it would just be stripped down and recycled. We've removed that material from the joinery workshop, brought it into the electrical setting and used that material to then show a different body of students how to wire cables under floors or how to fit pipes through joists and that sort of stuff. So using one material or one exercise and then passing it between the departments rather than having them all being siloed as individuals. In addition to that, we did engage with the UWI's Climate Justice Hub, which offers students a global perspective on climate justice, crucial for embedding your goal 13, with a focus on fairness, inclusion and global south. And we also had materials from Isaias Hernandez, whose intersectionality work helped students explore how sustainability, race, class, and identity overlap, which deepened the understanding of the social side of sustainability. We feel like overall the impact and the reflections since then is that it had a huge impact. Students said it made sustainability feel real, achievable, and not a kind of distant or abstract measure. Staff found that working with the SDGs deepened critical thinking and practical skills and student engagement. One staff member in particular said that pledging to the teaching felt like leading from the front, setting this tone for sustainability in education. And our activities, we feel, prove that sustainability touches everything from well-being, social justice, food security, and community resilience, truly reflecting the spirit of the SDGs. Going forward, we plan to embed it across the teaching, whereas this has been almost like a trial run. This is our toe in the water moment with the SDGs. We've seen the success, we've seen how well it's worked. We're hoping for next year to put ourselves further up that leaderboard. So we're going to be aiming to make it a whole college-wide approach next year. And as one college put, we're not just teaching sustainability, we're helping learners become the kind of citizens who will shape a fairer world. So that was pretty much it. So thank you, folks.
That was really fantastic to hear. Thank you so much, Jamie, for that. That sounds really interesting. And yeah, we definitely within SOS vouch for that whole institutional approach to these kinds of issues, and that they can't be, the crises, let alone globally, but also even locally, can't be done in silos. And it's also great that you actively embedded or used the University of the West Indies Climate Justice Hub materials. Because yeah, we'll be hearing from them a bit later. So that's yeah, that's nice to be in the same room, I guess. Brilliant. So our next speaker is from the University of Salford, Dave Beck.
Hello, thanks very much. So yeah, I'm Dave, and I teach social policy mostly at the University of Salford, but I'm a sociologist, and before being a sociologist, I really my undergraduate work was focused on sustainability, geography, human geography, and understanding environmental management. And when I started working at the University of Salford, I wanted to kind of bring my academic background and into sociology, and we didn't have anything that discussed sustainability. So I wrote a brand new module. So this is the first year that this module's run. And when I wrote it, it was about understanding environmental social policies. So it was about how, if you think about the filtering process from the UN down to the local environment, how those policies mechanisms work and how they change people. However, the module was really taken on board by the wider social sciences community at Salford. So I rewrote the module to become environmental justice, which is where we look at sustainability issues across both social policy, sociology, and criminology, to really bring like a holistic view of how local up to national and international and global environmental change is really important for graduates. So what this module really wanted to do was kind of bring social sciences students along with an environmental journey. And I'm just looking over some of the module evaluation feedback that I've just received this year. And, these are social sciences students. If they were that interested in sustainability and environmental stuff, they probably would have gone onto onto an environmental degree. But usually what we find is social sciences students don't tend to engage with environmental or sustainability discussions at all. But I'm just looking over some of module evaluation feedback, and it's overwhelmingly like, why didn't we know about this before? Why have we never been, why have we not been discussing this across all of the degree programs? So I've got some really great feedback on introducing sustainability stuff to social sciences students. So this module is going to continue for the foreseeable, and we're hoping maybe that it might go out wider to the wider social sciences community at Salford soon, over the next few years, hopefully. So what we wanted to do is get social sciences students ready for graduating into a world where sustainability really is probably going to be at the forefront of whatever job it is that they move into. So get them to really understand how their role, whatever role it is that they go into, whether it's research, whether it's academia, whether it's working in the third sector, private sector, wherever it is that they're going into work, that actually, their position in their role is still going to have an environmental, consideration as well. So I wanted to get them to understand the importance of it and to critically engage with where they fit within environmental justice, but also where they fit within the wider choices of what environmental justice means. So whatever discussions or decisions they make in their future role, what is going to be the environmental justice impact for the global community, people who their work, maybe if they're working in Manchester, maybe they're working somewhere in the UK, but the decisions that they make, what do they mean for the wider context? So we wanted to really work from local to global, but also backwards again then from global to local. And within this, I think maybe I just jumped in a little bit too deep with it, and I wanted to bring all the sustainable development goals into this. So I taught, out of 13 weeks, I probably taught 6 or 7. And we had other academics from across our social sciences department, especially the sustainable housing unit, who work on issues around sustainability in housing, poverty, social security, and things like that. Real academic live research that they're, these are not lectures, these are our the research side of my office. And they're doing actual real life research across the globe on issues of sustainability. So I got them to come in and deliver a few lectures on things such as sustainable mobility, eco-genocide, looking at how issues of ecological social justice works from maybe a Marxist perspective. So really giving social sciences students a deep grounding in theoretical literature, from maybe a Foucauldian position or a Baudusian position or a Marxist position.
Sorry, final minute reminder.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'll come into it now. And how it really resonated with where they are at that point. And that was mostly on the global stuff. In week 2, we visited our local MRF, the recycling centre in Manchester, to look at where all the, practically when our students put the bins out in their accommodation, where it actually goes to. And I think for most of our students, it was quite eye-opening to see, the collective massive waste from across Greater Manchester, and how this one centre in Greater Manchester repurposes it all and sends it all out. So we also had an En-ROADS practical where we had game theory, looking at game theory, whether it's Marxist or whether it's other, zero-sum theories, and how eco-genocide works there as well. We had some new research discussed as well by one of my colleagues, Adam Aitken, who's he's working on a new thing around flooding across Greater Manchester as well. Sustainable mobility, housing, how we can meet new sustainable housing goals, environmental justice. And we worked with our ESD team for their assessment, and we've got some amazing results from our students. What they were asked to do, the ESD team led by Neva Mole, were asked, they gave our students some problems and said, look, we've got all these issues across campus. How can we solve these issues? And that's what the students worked on. So it was a live brief. They worked on these for their assessment. They were around campus, they were doing research on understanding recycling and food waste and issues across the whole sustainable development goals. And we've got a couple of students at the minute who are working on developing an app, which is going to be repurposing graduates' things, like Vinted. They're going to be repurposing graduates' books, clothes, textiles, and Salford students will be able to collect these for free. Okay, I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much for that. I hate having to cut people off when it's such an intriguing conversation or presentation. But yeah, I think it's really nice to hear, though, that students get the opportunity to see where their waste ends up, because it's kind of always hits you in the face, almost literally. So yeah, thank you for that. So our final guest speakers are from the University of the West Indies, Celia and Hilary.
Thank you so much. Just checking my volume, as I had some issues at the beginning.
Yep, it's all good. Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Hello, everyone. I'm Celia Davidson Francis. I am the Regional Director of UWI's sustainability efforts here in Jamaica, and I'm delighted to share the University of the West Indies experience about the 2025 Teach In, how it's been rolled out across our campuses, engaged both educators and students, and its impact across the 17 UWI Caribbean countries that our university serves. I will cover the university-wide efforts and our future plans, and then hand over to my colleague, Hilary, who is going to focus on our global campus strategy. Our Teach In was launched with strong high-level institutional support under our One UE Responsible Futures Program banner. The acronym is OURFP, which, as you can see, is a little bit long, but it works. And we targeted all educators, making it a clear top-down directive that UWI is committed to embedding sustainability and the SDGs in all our programs, but inviting our educators to have equal importance, as well as having our students as partners and as leaders in many areas. To prepare our educators, we held sensitization sessions and then workshops, as this was our first time, showing them how to embed sustainability in teaching, and of course the SOS resources were very, very helpful. Students were briefed and encouraged to participate via debates, films, art, and active learning, and they certainly brought energy and enthusiasm and purpose to the teach-in. Our inaugural participation had strong results. Our educators pledged and we reached over 2,600 students. And as my colleague Hilary will explain, due to its structure, our global campus will over the summer end up reaching a total of 4,600 students. So we're thrilled, of course, to see UWI on the leaderboard early on. And of course, even more delighted that we ended up on the board at the end. Students even have basically rebranded our 1UE Responsible Futures program as our Futures program, which I think highlights their investment in shaping our Caribbean sustainable future. So we're very happy about that. Overall, the teach-in launched the integration of sustainability and the SDGs into our academic curriculum across all 5 of our campuses, which, as you know, are spread over our 17 countries. And it really highlights the phased whole institution approach that we are taking. And this will take place continually and will be emphasized by the annual teach-in. So this is our overall strategy, so that we have an annual reminder of what is important and also take care of any turnover in our staff. I just want to end by saying that we feel that the shift in our educators' mindset around sustainability integration is really remarkable, particularly within our business, the arts and social sciences. And it really is like a collective light has been switched on. So we're very, very pleased and enthusiastic and look forward to participating in the future. I'm going to hand over now to Hilary, my colleague, who will take over from here.
Thank you very much, Celia. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, everyone. I am Hilary Dreeks-Morris. I am the Manager Online Programs at the University of the West Indies Global Campus. And this morning, I am logging in from Trinidad. And I just wanted to say thank you to Celia for the introduction. In the UWI Global Campus, our strategy is going to actually be rolled out for this summer session. We will be having our sensitization meeting for our educators on the 14th of May. And the intention is to have in excess of 500 of our adjuncts and 2,000 of our students be impacted by the sensitization and the teaching that is to take place in summer. In summer, we have approximately 195 courses, over which we are hoping to have the sustainability development goals embedded in those courses for the summer session. The objective, of course, is to have our teaching staff sensitize in ways in which they can promote student discussions in their courses, and for students to reflect on and share how their lives are impacted by the various factors that affect sustainable development in their respective small island developing states. And this will result in student-led development projects, which we will be happy to report on as time progresses. Next slide, please. So the overall approach in the 2025 teaching, and in an effort to support our educators, we have developed several resources, and 3 of them are going to be highlighted. The first is our UWI Global Campus resource site. And this is a space where resources will be housed, and it will provide easy access for our facilitators, for our educators to access information pertaining to the sustainability development goals. We have also included a video for our educators, as you will appreciate, because we are a distributed campus. we need to have resources placed where persons can access them at any day and at any time. And so the video is one of those resources that will aid our educators in being able to navigate the space and to know exactly where things are and what they have to do. In terms of our second resource, I'm very proud of the faculty Moodle book, which was designed to assist again our educators in identifying relevant sustainable development objectives and competencies. And this is how they are going to actually link some of the topics that they will be selecting to include in their particular disciplines for teaching. And there are examples to guide them in how they can create learning activities and assessments in their courses. Lastly, we have also developed a log sheet, which is going to be used to, of course, log and monitor the progress of all the sustainable development goals that are taught in the courses across the campus. So the goals that should be included for our teaching in the summer session are included below. And certainly we have not only limited our educators to these goals, but these are the ones that we would be looking at specifically during the summer session. So in all, the 2025 teaching was launched, has launched the integration of sustainability and the Sustainable Development Goals in the academic curriculum across all 5 campuses, not only the global campus, but the other 4 landed campuses, and highlights the phased whole institution approach taken by the University of the West Indies, which will now take place and emphasized continually by the annual teaching. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilary. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, Celia and Hilary, for that. I think it's always illuminating to hear how such a quite unique institution like the University of the West Indies can kind of use this teaching as a tool to kind of drive that momentum going forward. So it isn't just 1 month of a year, but it actually is truly and systemically embedded in everything that the institution does. So yeah, it's really nice to hear from those stories of a cross-institution approach to this and beyond as well. So yeah, thank you so much for that, and thank you to all of the presenters as well for taking the time to take part in this. I'm now going to hand over to my amazing colleague Sonia to talk a bit about going further with education for sustainable development.
Yeah, thanks, Oliver. And thank you all to all the presenters. It's amazing to just think about the broad range of work that's taken place in engaging with the Sustainable Development Goals. And again, I think it goes back to the points Oliver made about how beneficial the Sustainable Development Goals are for work across all kinds of topics, but also all kinds of levels, from the individual to the more systemic. So really, really brilliant and interesting to see. So there's so much interesting work that's happened from the presenters who are here today, but also from the over 1,000 educators that have pledged to take part this year. What do we do now? How do we continue with this momentum that has been built from the teaching at your institutions? So we have some suggestions, some signposting to some of the ways that we can support you to continue with this work. Next slide, please. Thanks, Oliver. So on the screen, we have a number of different initiatives that we facilitate in partnership with institutions and their students. So the first one is Responsible Futures. Responsible Futures is a whole institution approach to embedding sustainability in all teaching and learning. It uses a framework of 51 criteria to support institutions to work with their students to try new initiatives, embed sustainability into existing initiatives, take on new approaches, to essentially essentially create an enabling environment for the transformation of the curriculum for sustainability. The program's been running for a decade in the UK and internationally since the end of 2023. And I'm really delighted to share actually that 6 of the 10 institutions on the leaderboard were from Responsible Futures institutions. So it's a really interesting way for you to take the work that you're doing on the SDGs and put it into a cohesive strategic framework to continue in partnership with your students. So we'll make sure to share a link to the program in the chat. There's also Teach the Future. So we run a number of student-led campaigns. Teach the Future is one of our longest running student-led campaigns. It partners students with us essentially to lead on campaigns to transform education for sustainability, specifically looking at national curricula and what's happening at the national level in England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So really interesting opportunity for students in the UK to learn more about politics, learn more about how to make those changes at that government level. Super interesting stuff. And then there's our Learning Academy. So there's been lots of conversation around training, workshops, continued professional development. So we offer a range of workshops and training, both bespoke as well as existing trainings that you can work with us to deliver at your institutions. All sorts of topics, including working with educators to understand the relevance of sustainability to their discipline and how they might be able to do more work to embed sustainability in learning. We work with course representatives or academic representatives at universities and colleges, helping students understand how through that role as a course representative, they can advocate for sustainability and ESD and all sorts of other things, including carbon literacy training. So Oliver's very kindly putting all the links in the chat. So that's another way you might be able to say, okay, there's lots of momentum from the Teach In. Let's all get together for a workshop or for a training to further and deepen our understanding and think about next year's Teach In or the next initiative that we'd like to engage in. Next slide, please. And then, of course, there's lots going on around the SDGs. This campaign is about the SDGs. So what do you do with everything that's happening? There's lots happening in both the formal and the informal curriculum. Educators all across your institutions engaging in different ways. We offer student-led sustainability curriculum mapping, where we work with your students and we train your students to actually map the level of SDG incorporation into teaching and learning at your institution. We also look at mapping sustainability skills and types of teaching pedagogies that support sustainability learning. So really interesting. We've worked with over 20 institutions and over 500 of their students. So it could be an interesting next step to think, okay, there's lots of activity, but how do we get a baseline understanding of how much activity there is and to what extent we're engaging with the Sustainable Development Goals? Really helpful way to monitor and track your progress and to think about, okay, this year in this teaching, you've done this. Next year, what are you working towards and how will you monitor it? So another area that we can support with. Fab, back to you, Oliver. Thank you.
Amazing. And yes, feel free to look at the links to the chat in your time because yeah, we're extremely passionate about just being support crews wherever we can, basically. So yeah, amazing. So in terms of next steps for the teacher and beyond, as you may know already, so we have some feedback surveys, and these are feedback surveys for those that have already pledged, or maybe you're in the process of doing your pledge, or you'll be doing them at a later date. Either way, we want to hear from your experience of the campaign. So we have one survey for all educators who took part or are taking part, as well as a separate survey for students or learners to see what they felt about the experience. And everyone who completes either of those surveys will have a chance to win £25 for a charity donation of their choice. And yes, so do feel free to complete that survey by 15th of May. And we'll also be publishing the campaign report, including some of these case studies and others that were shared. And yeah, those are the two main next steps. In terms of this session, though, we've been through quite a lot of content in an hour. I'm always impressed by how much can happen in 1 hour. So if anyone had any questions for any of the presenters or maybe some of the content that me or Sonia mentioned, feel free to raise your hand or post in the chat. Yeah. And if not, I'm going to go first then and take the limelight. and actually ask all of the presenters if there's one thing that you would change or maybe do differently in the future with the teaching, knowing from your experience in taking back this year or from previous years. Yeah, what might you do in the future, or what learnings have you gained from the experience? So maybe we could go to Celia and Hilary first.
Sure, thanks, Oliver. I think with the University of the West Indies, we would probably have started the sensitization and workshops a little earlier, not realizing quite the scale of the scope that we had to cover in the time. But overall, I think that would be the main thing that we have as well, more communications going out earlier. But I think having learned from that, we're going to be starting next year and making sure that we have not reminders, but ways to keep the overall thrust top of mind with additional support from our marketing departments and our student services directors, so that the message is constantly there, but in a very positive way, and using student input as to how best to make it most effective and most appealing and engaging to them.
And thanks, Celia. And I can add that I do concur with everything Celia has said. But on the side of actually doing program development to include courses that are speaking specifically to sustainable development goals, had we started a little earlier, Celia would have mentioned, we are in the process of reviewing some of our programs at this time. And certainly, it is a good time to, speak to our course developers to ensure that, some of these sustainability development goals are embedded in the courses, in the programs as they go forward for review and renewal.
Amazing, really good to hear that. And yeah, any of the other speakers in terms of any lessons learned or what you might do going forward in the future?
I think what we kind of noticed was an issue at Forth Valley College was just the calendar is so full, and there's always some event running. And personally, this was my first time hearing of the SDG teaching, and although sustainability is intertwined in what we're doing every day anyway, to focus it and gather the information and hear back from other kind of staff and managers was quite a challenge, especially over this time of year. So I think just more forward planning, and I think it'll make a world of difference to what we're doing over here.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things that we do try with this teaching is so that it doesn't. The last thing we want to do is add more to people's workloads, and yeah, we know the amount of fatigue it can be with everything. There's so many events going on, or things coming out in our diaries. But I think it's designed to be quite flexible and emphasis on embedding. There's no need to feel like you need to reinvent everything you do. A lot of the ways that sustainability and education for sustainability can be already embedded is kind of ready available. It's just a matter of getting the word out, getting people's sort of the momentum going. And we've seen that very clearly with the University of West Indies and the amount of stuff that can be achieved in such a holistic way. Dave, did you want to add anything?
I'm just thinking now, just like Jamie's just said, ours is quite full as well. And I designed 13 weeks, but because it was the first time that this module's run, maybe I just threw in too much. What I'm thinking is next year, next January when this module runs, it's a semester 2 module, I may open this up to more student-led discussions and get the students to reflect on what it is that they want the content to discuss. So it's an approach I'm moving with most of my teaching is to make it student-led. And I think given that the students who we're dealing with, I think it'd be perfect, this module, for more student-led stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And I do feel like that the module that you were speaking about earlier you know, if I was still a student, I would without a doubt in a heartbeat take that budget. So it sounds really good, and it covers such a broad range of content. It does kind of like illustrate that stuff and that topics that do often get overlooked in sustainability. People may not realize actually there are topics that relate to it, but they don't realize that. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting that word out and reframing it in a way that they can find more relatable and personable. Amazing. So unless there's any final
Can I just add to that, Oliver? I
yeah,
think
sure.
the point about students doing more to encourage their educators. This year we actually we've been speaking to NACTIS, so they have student groups across universities and I think potentially colleges. I need to look into that. And there is, I think, really interesting scope to work with Enactus and other like similar kind of student societies from each university to perhaps do like a SDG activity during the teach-in to encourage their educators to take part. So definitely watch this space. That's something we're quite interested in doing. If anyone has ideas, like email us and get in touch, and we'd be really happy to explore that with you. But watch this space because that's something we're interested in as well.
Exactly, yes. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining the session. If you do have any additional ideas or questions or how we can improve this campaign going forward, feel free to email us about it. Sonia's put our we'll put our email in the chat. And yeah, it's been a really lovely session. I should say that the teaching will return. It sounds a bit like a movie, but it will return in 2026. And yeah, you're definitely to keep it up to date with that. Feel free to follow us on our LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and all the rest of it, as well as subscribing to our newsletter. We'll also put the link in the chat as well for that. And yeah, it's been yeah, again, as I mentioned, it's been my first time coordinating this, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been extremely fulfilling. And I hope, yeah, that you've all found it a great starting point or a way to further doing the amazing work you're doing at the moment. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye.
having us.
you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.